Volvo knows it needs more SUVs. It seeks a more youthful audience, and it has to have more electric models. This C40 Recharge delivers all three in one package and shows clearly the direction the brand is heading in the future. There's a base front-driven model and a state-of-the-art fully electric all-wheel drive powertrain that offers a WLTP-rated range of 274 miles on a single charge and an output of 408 horsepower. The drawback either way is premium pricing, but otherwise a lot of boxes seem to have been ticked here.
Given that Volvo's been making overt noises about full electrification for a decade now, it's something of a surprise to realise that this C40 Recharge EV introduces the company's very first exclusively electric model line, especially so since the Swedish marque is telling us that it will only sell full electric models from 2030 onwards. As you might expect, the C40 borrows everything that matters from Volvo's very first all-electric model, the XC40 Recharge Pure Electric, but clothes that powertrain with more unique styling and a swept-back coupe-style silhouette. Think of the two models as something akin to what Audi already offers in this segment, with its Q4 e-tron and Q4 Sportback e-tron SUVs, and it'll be somewhere close to what the Swedish maker is trying to do here. Like the XC40 Recharge, the C40 will be sold primarily online. And as with that car and the last design of this sort that Volvo made, the C30, sold between 2006 and 2013, it rolls down the production lines of Volvo's Belgium factory in Ghent, which is gradually transitioning away from producing combustion models. This C40 is itself a transitional car, its CMA platform inevitably slightly compromised by the need to take the combustion engines its cousin, the XC40, still offers. But it's an important stepping stone into the bespoke designed all-electric future that Volvo has planned for us, and offers some interesting touches of design that aim to set it apart in the increasingly overcrowded premium mid-sized EV crossover segment. Volvo's real electric future depends on coming models using the brand's EV-only SPA2 architecture. But this C40 paves the way for them in key areas of sales and design. In the words of its maker, it symbolises electrification and delivers on it. But what does that actually mean? And will it allow this car to stand out in this class to customers who might not usually consider a Volvo? Well, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the car and driving road test, to find out. No keys required to access this C40 Recharge. And none is required to start it either. And once you've taken a seat and noted that the green ready sign is glowing on the instrument panel, you're good to go. At first glance, the cabin here is just like the brand's XC40, a pure electric one, of course, hence the slightly different digital instrument display that you get in other Volvo EVs, featuring a battery charge indicator and a power meter showing whether you're using charge or regenerating it. So, time to get on the move. Which, as so often in EVs, happens very quickly indeed, especially in this Recharge Twin all-wheel drive model, which uses the larger 78 kilowatt-hour battery pack and twin electric motor setup, one on each axle, that feature not only on this model's XC40 pure electric equivalent, but also on the top version of the extremely rapid Polestar 2 EV crossover. There's 408 horsepower on tap, yes, you heard that right, which seems like rather a lot for a car of this kind. Plonk your right foot down and the whole experience is both silent and violent, sprinting you to 62 miles an hour from rest in just 4.7 seconds, with more torque than you get in a Nissan GT-R Super sports car, 660 Newton meters of it, at which point the motor's spinning at a heady 14,000 RPM. Actually, we're slightly confused by why Volvo feels the need to give all-wheel drive variants of its small EVs this much power, far in excess of what you get on top versions of rivals like the Mercedes EQA and the Volkswagen ID.5. It's amusing to have beneath your right foot, but the car doesn't really need it, and most customers won't really want it. Just as well then, that Volvo's also offering lower powered front-driven versions of this C40, those badged simply Recharge rather than Recharge Twin. The base Recharge model's less powerful 231 horsepower electric motor won't make too much real-world difference either. It's still enough to get you to 62 miles an hour in 7.4 seconds, though in this case the top speed's limited to just 99 miles an hour. Still, when was the last time you went over 99 miles an hour? You can crest into three figures with this Recharge Twin variant, but only just. Like almost all current Volvo models, it's top speed limited at 112 miles an hour, which can't be to do with preserving driving range because you decimate that at much earlier cruising speeds. As with any EV, a lengthy high-speed highway trip substantially reduces the distance you can travel between charges. It's interesting to note that the 274-mile range we quoted for this twin model is a significant 25 miles less than you get from an equivalent version of that Polestar 2 model we mentioned earlier. That deficit's probably down to this C40's extra 84 kilos of curb weight, which, as with so many contenders in this class, is something you'll feel very quickly on your test drive if you're coming to this car from a combustion model. To get the claimed mileage, you'll need to maximise brake regeneration, which is simpler than in rival models because, rather disappointingly, no paddles behind the steering wheel are here provided for that purpose. Your only option is to fish around the setup menus in the centre dash screen and engage what the Swedish maker calls one-pedal drive. This dramatically increases the regenerative braking effect when you come off the throttle, to the point where, as advertised, the brake pedal will hardly ever be needed unless you're coming to a complete stop. You might be surprised to find that there are no other tarmac drive modes, not even an eco one. Well, not unless you count the driving screen toggle option to firm up the steering feel anyway, which isn't really worth bothering with because all it does is introduce an extra level of gloopiness into the feel-less steering setup. True, you don't need the steering response of a hot hatch in a car like this, but this model's Polestar 2 cousin shows that it's possible to produce a rack that's both light and at the same time feelsome enough to tell you what the front wheels are doing through tight turns. Volvo's engineers should learn from that. Not that you're going to be often tempted to hurl your C40 about. No one's yet worked out how to build an EV at anything like the kind of weight of an equivalent car with an engine, and as we intimated earlier, this one's as portly as any of them. To give you some perspective on that, this top C40 is heavier than the brand's hulking great XC90 SUV, tipping the scales at well over 2.1 tonnes, which is a substantial 460 kilos more than an equivalent XC40 combustion model. Something that's clearly evident through the turns, despite the low centre of gravity delivered by the central underfloor battery placement. Where all that battery hulk helps this car, though, is when it comes to ride quality. Well, higher speed ride quality anyway. Lower frequency potholes and speed humps catch the damping out a bit, but once you're underway and push up the rev range, progress, even over really poor surfaces, is remarkably assured, despite the lack of any kind of adaptive damping system, even as an option. Not quite so good is refinement. We refer to this car as silent and violent, but that's in comparison to a combustion model. Compared to other equivalent EVs, there's more wind roar and certainly more tyre roar than we would ideally like. In compensation for highway users, Volvo offers the latest version of its Pilot Assist driver assistance system for steering, acceleration and braking support, there to help take the strain during long motorway journeys or when sitting in traffic. The latest version of this setup now uses Google Maps for information like speed limits and bends in the road to improve its functionality. And it senses if you're not grasping the steering wheel, at which point you'll be admonished with warnings that, if ignored, will result in the car being brought to a gradual stop. We mentioned earlier that no selectable tarmac drive settings were provided. A little surprisingly though, there is one for life away from the tarmac, an off-road mode, which sounds rather redundant on a car that's hardly even a crossover. Actually though, it might come in useful in the winter months, working at under 25 miles an hour, to manage traction on poor surfaces or slippery downhill gradients. Don't get too enthusiastic about the prospect of using that with just 177mm of ground clearance. The kind of terrain you'd be able to attempt here will be modestly challenging indeed. You can certainly forget severely unmade surfaces and gnarlier tracks, though Volvo does quote a 450mm wading depth, the same as an XC40. Of perhaps more relevance is the fact that, unlike some EV crossovers, this one will be quite comfortable towing, thanks to the even distribution of power between the front and rear motors. With the optional retractable tow bar fitted, you'll be able to tug along up to 1.5 tons. If you wanted to regularly do that kind of thing in a small electric Volvo though, you'd have chosen this car's XC40 Recharge pure electric showroom SUV stablemate. The C40 is more about pavement presence and the need to drive down the brand's ageing customer demographic. We think that something rather more different than a coupe-like XC40 is going to be required to do that, which is exactly what we might get in the coming wave of fashion-led EVs the brand is currently preparing for us. In the meantime though, this car represents a useful step in the right direction. Sometimes it's refreshing to upset an ordered plan. Volvo's route to full electrification was supposed to be based on full electric versions of the XC40 combustion models, paving the way to the all-new SPA2 platform EVs that will complete the company's switch to a full battery range by 2030. But then one day, a young stylist in T. John Mayer's exterior design team, Yuri Zamkovenka, spontaneously jotted down a sketch of a shape that might widen the XC40 pure electric model's appeal. And the C40 Recharge was born. As the C designated model badge suggests, it's coupe-like, but Volvo prefers to suggest that this letter stands for crossover, which is probably accurate. This model's squat muscularity emphasised by its tall rear deck and big wheels that sit in black plastic-clad arches. Obviously, the major way this car differs from the XC40 is with its roofline, which here slopes 69mm lower. Total length is 6mm shorter than that car too, but the width and wheelbase dimensions are identical. T. John Mayer says his favourite view of this car is this, what he calls the rear 7/8 perspective, which best shows the chunky swept-back silhouette with its contrast roof, and the exaggerated stance delivered by the huge alloy rims, which are either 19 or, as in this case, 20 inches in size, and feature aerodynamic styling influenced by the company's 360C concept car of 2018. The front-end finishing, with its unnecessary closed grille, is arguably less successful, with a level of indecision evident between combustion and EV schools of design. Future Volvo EVs will have more overtaking presence than this, but there are still some nice touches, like the angled lower bumper corner sections with their integrated black fog lamp panels, and the way the brand's familiar Thor's hammer headlights are augmented with little pixel LEDs which automatically adjust to light conditions and switch on and off independently to optimise the illuminating pattern. The segmented vertical rear LED lamps are equally emblematic, providing a testament to the engineering challenge of extending one big lamp along the roofline edging, managed here, while also creating a modern take on a familiar design. There are two spoilers, a subtle lower one, and a larger protuberance on top of the rear screen with rather interesting squared off corner segments. But what's more important, of course, is what you can't see. The fact that though this car is a dedicated EV, it's still hobbled little by having to have CMA chassis that from its outset had to be engineered around accommodating bulky petrol and diesel engines up front. It's interesting that this car's direct cousin, the Polestar 2, feels a little less constricted by the same platform and powertrain combination. And equally interesting that if the Polestar 2 had ended up being a Volvo, as was originally planned, then this C40 probably wouldn't exist. Before we take a look up front, let's also mention this care key, which enables owners to set speed limits when lending their cars to young or inexperienced drivers, which is useful in this particular case, given the provision of over 400 braked horses from this battery powertrain. Right, what about the interior? Has Volvo also made this car's cabin feel younger and different? Not really. In Sweden, it's dark and grey most of the year, and it is in here too, despite the welcome standard provision of a fixed panoramic glass roof. It's a cabin carried over without much revision from the XC40, which inevitably means that on a car costing potentially well over 50% more than the entry-level combustion version of one of those, there are trim elements that feel somewhat out of place at this price point. You might characterise these door and fascia striated plastic trimming panels, standard only with top ultimate trim, in that category, but you'll forgive their unappealing tactility at night when they illuminate with backlit, translucent, three-dimensional graphics apparently traced from the mountainous topography of Sweden's Abisko National Park. These panels are made from recycled plastic, which unfortunately is rather too obvious, but does fit with the sustainable theme chosen for the vegan-trimmed cabin, which offers Volvo's first leather-free interior. Two upholstery options feature instead, one containing naturally renewable wool fibres, and the other, as here, using a combination of suede textile, also made of recycled plastic, and Microtech material. If you'd hoped to bury your brogues in a deeper pile carpet on a £60,000 car, console yourself with the knowledge that, like the weird felt used on the door cards, it's made of 100% recycled PET plastic bottles. So, an interior that's ecological, calming, but not particularly suggestive of full electric technology. There isn't even the usual B setting on the auto gearbox that most electric vehicles tend to have. The provided digital monitors do, of course, have bespoke EV features. The 12.3-inch progressive driver display screen you view through this pleasingly chunky three-spoke wheel, for instance, has a green frame while charging. And when the car's in use, as well as the speed meter on the left, it provides an EV drive meter on the right, the latter showing you whether you're using battery charge or regenerating it. A small battery charge indicator sits at the bottom of the display, though annoyingly there's no accompanying mileage readout for range. And between the screen's two main gauges is a space that you can fill with a navigation map using this alternative view button on the steering wheel. Unfortunately, unlike rival setups, there are only two view options. More EV features can be found on this 9-inch centre console portrait touchscreen. This, showcasing Volvo's latest Android infotainment setup, is also used by the Polestar 2, which includes worldwide navigation to Google Maps, advanced voice recognition by Google Assistant, and access to the Google Play Store for a range of in-car apps. YouTube Music is also built in. What wasn't included at the time of this test was Apple CarPlay, but Volvo told us it was just about to add that as an over-the-air update. If you're an Apple disciple, check with your dealer that the car you're looking at has had that. The adoption of Google Assistant brings huge advances in voice control, allowing customers by speech to control the car's major functions, perform detailed web searches, and even connect to Google connected devices at home. The upright monitor's home screen looks similar to that of the old Sensus infotainment setup you might be familiar with from older modern-era Volvos, primarily made up of 4 horizontal bars, say as in this case Maps, Bluetooth, phone and the car's range assistant, some of which you can swipe to the right for more info. More key options lie along the bottom frame of the monitor, including in the centre a fan icon which connects you into the climate system functions, which unfortunately haven't been separated out into more accessible physical buttons. To the left and right along the screen's bottom edge lie your main access points for information, and that range assistant we just mentioned, which helps you with EV range and energy consumption, is one of the features that sit behind this Windows icon on the bottom left. This icon is also your access point for a car status section, plus maps, Bluetooth, radio, phone, the Google Play online store, and options for controlling the Google Voice Assistant we mentioned earlier. For all the stuff you'll want concerning driving functions, you'll need a separate section which sits behind this cog icon on the bottom right of the home screen. This connects you into a menu with driving, charging, sound, connectivity, controls, apps and Google sections. It's the driving segment you'll mainly need. Within this, there's a key menu that includes the car's off-road mode, pilot assist functions, safety assist features, and a driving dynamics section where you access a firmer steering feel option and select the car's one-pedal drive brake regeneration function. Enough on screens. Otherwise, things are just as they would be in any version of this model's conventional XC40 cousin, which means that it's not as glitzy as, say, a Mercedes EQA or a Tesla Model Y, but it's better screwed together. It also hides its hard plastics better, in our opinion, than an Audi Q4 Sportback e-tron. The seats are as supportive as they usually are in a Volvo, though they can get a little sweaty on longer journeys. Each front chair includes lumbar support as standard, and above base trim you get them with heating and power operation too. And they sit you quite high, which combined with the slim windscreen pillars gives you a good view forward. Over-the-shoulder vision, though, is severely compromised by a huge rear D pillar blind spot, so it's just as well that all versions of the car come with rear parking sensors. Avoid base trim and you get front sensors and a rear view camera setup too. The top 360-degree view version of the latter being one of the best systems of its type we've tried. With this top trim level, there's also a useful screen button that automatically retracts the rear head restraints to improve your rearward vision. Are there issues? Well, not too many, assuming you can live with everything we've talked about so far. You might object to the fact that the sunroof is fixed unless you stretch to top trim, or that the Napa leather on the steering wheel feels like foam rubber. And you also might, like us, be slightly disappointed by detail blunders, like the fact that Volvo hasn't bothered to remove the blanked-off starter button to the lower right of the steering wheel, a carryover from combustion-engined XC40 models that use this same dash. Overall, probably the most irritating thing, though, is the way you have to delve into the centre screen menus for the one-pedal drive brake regeneration option that you might want to frequently access to control the way the car slows from speed. To get that, you have to fish about for that tiny cog's lower screen icon we mentioned, then click again on another driving menu, then scroll right down and click again, all of which would be dangerous to try and do whilst at speed, which is all the more annoying because a devoted button for this function would have been so easy for Volvo to provide behind one of the blanked off switches to the right of this circular volume controller on the centre stack. Let's finish here at the front of the cabin with a look at interior practicality. The door pockets, which have bottle recesses at the end, are nicely carpeted to stop small items from moving around, and huge, big enough to even take a laptop, mainly because the audio speakers that would have usually resided down here have been moved to the top. You also get this big illuminated storage area at the base of the centre stack, complete with a USB-C port and a 12-volt socket. Plus there's a wireless charging mat included too, and a little lidded cubby. A rather useful narrow storage channel resides in the front passenger footwell. We're not really sure what these clips at the base of the A-pillars are for. And more usefully, twin cup holders sit by the small stubby gear stick with a small lidded cubby further back that turns out to be a removable waste bin. A much larger storage area is just behind. Not so good is the lack of a standard overhead sunglasses compartment and the restricted size of the glove box, which is smaller than it looks and, rather unnecessarily, is almost completely taken up with the owner's manual. A digital version of that features on the centre screen. That glove box does, though, include a pen clip and a neat fold-out hook which can sit proud on the dash after the glove box is closed. Perfect for your handbag or Friday night takeaway. Other nice touches include the provision of a parking ticket clip at the base of the windscreen and the way that plastic payment cards can be pointed into slots in the lower dash by your right knee. Time to take a look in the rear. Now, you'd expect this crossover model's more coupe-like silhouette and the centrally sited battery pack beneath the floor might together rather restrict headroom back here. Actually, it's not too bad once you're in, though taller folk will inevitably find their heads brushing the ceiling. Ah yes, the ceiling. As mentioned earlier, it's mainly glass, which is just as well, because otherwise this rear part of the cabin really would feel dark and pokey thanks to that huge D-pillar blind spot we mentioned. It's disappointing that an electric vehicle with no need for a transmission tunnel nevertheless has one that's so big that it's almost impossible for an adult to sit in the centre back here. Such are the issues with joint use of the same platform for combustion models and EVs. You'd have none of this and much more stretch-out room in a ground-up EV design in this class, like a Kia EV6 or a Hyundai Ioniq 5. As you'd expect, given the fact that this car has the same 2,702mm wheelbase as an XC40, shoulder and legroom are the same as in that car. Quite reasonable, in other words, and there's lots of room to slide your brogues beneath each front seat. This seat bench back here unfortunately doesn't slide, nor does its backrest recline, but the rear headrests are well placed and comfortable, and if you avoid base trim, the upholstery is also heated. There's also a central armrest incorporating a pair of cup holders, plus beverages can also sit in the provided moulded recesses in the little carpeted door pockets. In addition, there are netted seat back pockets and you get little storage trays between the seat base edges and the doors. Top spec gets you these nice overhead LED reading lights on each side, each with an accompanying indentation next to it that looks like it might be a USB-C port, but isn't. Those, two of them, sit just beneath the vertical, futuristic air vents, which are of the same futuristic design as those used at the front. We mentioned the underfloor battery pack. Well, Volvo's positioned it so that boot space isn't too compromised. And this standard powered tailgate, which can operate with a kick action, if you avoid entry-level trim, rises to reveal 413 litres of it. That's 39 litres less than you get in a comparable XC40 pure electric, but 49 litres more than you get from a comparable and near identically engineered Polestar 2. You can fit 853 litres of luggage into a C40 if you load to the roof. There are some really nice convenience touches here, principally this neat, flexible load floor with grocery bag holder feature, fitted to mid and top trim levels. With this, the leading edge of the load floor can rise and divide the space laterally to stop your shopping from sliding around. The three hinges of this divider even stand proud of its top edge, giving you hooks from which you can hang shopping bags. The boot opening is wide and there's no awkward lip to get things over. Delve down under the floor and a bit more space is available, though not enough to accommodate a spare wheel. There's a net down here too, which you could bring up into the main cargo area and attach to the four provided body-coloured tie-down points to stop small items from rolling around as you drive. There's a recessed area off to the right where this first aid kit is, and big bag hooks on each side. But this model's EV remit doesn't appear to be enough to get you a 12-volt socket back here. If you need more room, then a ski hatch is provided for longer items, which is some compensation for the fact that you can't have the useful 40-20-40 rear seatback split that some rivals offer. Fold the rear bench forward and up to 853 litres of total capacity is revealed, or up to 1,205 litres if you load to the roof. You might have noticed the absence of charging leads back here. That's because they're stored elsewhere in the car. Let's show you. Because no engine is needed beneath the clamshell bonnet, Volvo has used the space to create a frunk, a 31-litre space that's perfect for the two provided charge leads. It can't really accommodate much else though. It's worth pointing out that one of these standard charge leads is for a 3-pin plug, and some rivals charge you extra for that. And that the 3-pin one is usefully long, 7 metres in fact, Volvo realising that it might need to be to reach a domestic socket. There's premium pricing here, but then that's also the case for obvious direct rivals, and we'll get to those after we've briefed you on the asking figures required for this model. The C40 Recharge comes with a choice of either a front-driven single-motor powertrain, that's the standard C40 Recharge, or a more powerful all-wheel drive dual-motor setup. That's this top C40 Recharge twin variant. Both use the same 78 kilowatt-hour battery, of which 75 kilowatt-hours are usable. At the time of this test in spring 2022, prices were starting from around £47,000 for the front-driven version, offered in Core, Plus or Ultimate levels of trim. The all-wheel drive model, priced from around £58,000, comes in Plus or Ultimate spec. Primarily, ordering will be online, though you can do that from a dealer showroom if you prefer to have someone guide you through the process. You can, of course, test drive the car in the conventional way at your local Volvo franchise. As we'll see in a minute, those prices, which represent a premium of £1,350 over the equivalent XC40 Recharge model, are rather at the premium end of what's being charged for outright purchase with cars in this segment. So perhaps it's just as well that Volvo expects hardly any C40 Recharge customers to use outright purchase as a form of acquisition. Instead, the brand expects most of them, perhaps up to 95%, to use its Care by Volvo subscription options. Unlike traditional forms of finance, with Care by Volvo, there's no deposit or joining fee, just a clear monthly amount that includes servicing, maintenance, wear and tear items, and vehicle tax over a 3-year period. Customers also have the option of adding insurance or choosing to use their own broker. Either way, you sign up in just a few minutes online, and the car will then be delivered to your door. There are 2 Care by Volvo packages available, either a Care by Volvo fixed 36-month contract giving you 6,000 annual miles and allowing for customers to top up their limit at the rate of £15 a month for each additional 2,000-mile block, up to 10,000 miles, and then add £10 extra on top for the maximum limit of 12,000 miles. If all that sounds a bit constrictive, then you might prefer the idea of the alternative Care by Volvo flexible contract, which allows for you to give 3 months' notice to change or cancel cars. The flexible arrangement's obviously more expensive by around £130 a month, but both packages are reasonable value by the standards of the sort of more conventional finance packages you'd be looking at with competing segment EV models. At the time of this test, as we said in spring 2022, this top Recharge twin all-wheel drive version was available on the fixed contract package in top Ultimate trim at £669 a month, which, to give you some perspective, is about what you'd be paying for something like a BMW iX3 on PCP finance over the same 3-year period with a 15% deposit. Enough on that. What about the way this Volvo's pricing compares to direct segment rivals? Well, we'll start with the front-driven C40 Recharge model, which, as we've said, is priced from around £47,000, which is about the same as a base rear-driven Ford Mustang Mach-E 75 kilowatt-hour model or an Audi Q4 Sportback 40 e-tron. And usefully less than a Nissan Ariya in equivalent Evolve 87 kilowatt-hour form, around £51,000, or a Volkswagen ID.5 Pro Performance 77 kilowatt-hour, around £57,000. Quite a few obvious rivals cost quite a lot less than the front-driven version of this Volvo, though. The Cupra Born in 77 kilowatt-hour form costs around £40,000, while the Polestar 2 in base standard range single motor guise costs around £42,000, which is also about what you'll pay for a rear-driven 77.4 kilowatt-hour Kia EV6. A Hyundai Ioniq 5 in rear-driven 77.4 kilowatt-hour form costs around £45,000. What about rivals for this C40 Recharge twin all-wheel drive model, which, as we've said, cost around £58,000 at the time of this test? That's about the same as an equivalent Nissan Ariya Evolve 87 kilowatt-hour e-Force, but it's more than just about all the other models we'd see as direct competitors. At the time of this test, an Audi Q4 Sportback 50 e-tron Quattro cost around £55,000. A Ford Mustang Mach-E all-wheel drive 75 kilowatt-hour was around £54,000. A Mercedes EQA 350 4MATIC was around £53,000. A Hyundai Ioniq 5 all-wheel drive 77.4 kilowatt-hour Ultimate model was around £52,000. For real value, though, you'd pay only £48,000 for either a Kia EV6 all-wheel drive, 77.4 kilowatt-hour, or the car that's mechanically almost identical to a C40 Recharge twin, the Polestar 2 long-range dual motor. It's all fuel for thought. Still, if having considered all of this, you decide that it is still a C40 that you really want, your next task will be to choose between the 3 trim levels we mentioned earlier. Base core spec, as we said earlier, is limited to the front-driven Recharge model, but it gets you most of what you really need. Like all versions of this EV Volvo, it comes with 2 charge cables, including a 3-pin Type 2 cable, which some rivals charge you extra for, and in addition, of course, as with every EV, to auto transmission. Key exterior features include full LED headlights, 19-inch diamond-cut double-spoke alloy wheels, a contrast-coloured black stone roof, incorporating a full-length fixed panoramic glass sunroof. You can also tick off power folding mirrors, dark-tinted rear windows, a powered tailgate, rear parking sensors, and auto headlamps and wipers. You get a very complete level of camera safety kit too, and we'll brief you on that shortly. Inside, with core spec, you get a 12.3-inch progressive driver display screen in the instrument binnacle to replace conventional dials. And there's 2-zone electronic climate control, complete with Volvo's Clean Zone air quality system and pollen filter. You're treated to a sport-tailored steering wheel, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, a luggage net, a wireless charging mat, front seat lumbar support, and eco-friendly textile upholstery. There's a very complete media connectivity offering too, accessed via a 9-inch centre console portrait touchscreen, which now showcases Volvo's latest infotainment setup. It's powered by Android and developed by Google. Plus, the system includes worldwide navigation to Google Maps, advanced voice recognition by Google Assistant, and access to the Google Play Store for a range of in-car apps. The adoption of Google Assistant brings huge advances in voice control, allowing customers to control the car's major functions, perform detailed web searches, and even connect to Google connected devices at home merely by speaking. And of course, via the centre screen, you can do all the conventional things too, like accessing an 8-speaker, 250-watt, high-performance sound DAB audio system, using Bluetooth or navigation, or linking into Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. The touchscreen receives software updates over the air, so the system's functionality will continue to improve as the technology develops. And all of this is in addition to the Volvo On Call connected services platform, which is fitted to every new Volvo. This enables customers to control various aspects of their car's functions from their smartphone, smartwatch, or tablet. For example, the car's cabin can be remotely heated or cooled before your journey, doors can be unlocked or locked, and you can make the car's headlights flash or sound the horn to help locate the car in a crowded car park. Extra functionality added to this pure electric Volvo includes mapping that shows the location of charging stations and route planning that will include stops at charging points if necessary. All of this then is included with basic core spec, and if you want more, or you want to choose this more powerful all-wheel drive Recharge twin model, then you'll need to be looking to mid-range plus spec. That gives you some significant additions: front LED fog lights, front park assist parking sensors, auto dimming door mirrors, puddle lights, and a kick action sensor for the power tailgate. Now inside at this level, there's heat and power adjustment for the front seats with memory settings for the driver's chair, plus a rear park assist rear view camera. There's also heat for the steering wheel and the rear seats, and you get a heat pump which enhances cabin heating and cooling efficiency in extreme weather in a way that will optimise your driving range, along with some extra camera safety kit items that we'll brief you on in a moment. If you want the full level of specification for your C40, you'll need the top Ultimate variant we're trying here, recognisable by its larger 20-inch 5-spoke diamond cut alloy wheels and premium metallic paint. This flagship model is the only one to get the special translucent ambient front door and instrument panel lighting system that Volvo's so proud of. And you also have to have it to get the brand's clever active bending pixel LED headlights with adaptive shadow technology. Ultimate spec also fits out the panoramic glass sunroof with a tilt and slide mechanism and a sun curtain. Plus there's textile upholstery, part trimmed in a suede-like material called Microtech. And you get a premium sound, 12-speaker, 600-watt Harman Kardon audio system with a subwoofer, direct unison sound clarity and Dolby Pro Logic 2 surround sound. You additionally get a very good parking camera, 360-degree surround view setup, plus power folding rear headrests, a cornering function for the front fog lights, a headlamp cleaning system and tailgate illumination. Before we finish with standard kit, let's finish with a quick briefing for you on Volvo's Pilot Assist driver assistance technology, which provides steering, acceleration and braking support to help take the strain during long motorway journeys or when sitting in traffic. In its latest form, Pilot Assist uses Google Maps for information like speed limits and bends in the road to improve its functionality. A key safety feature has been added to Pilot Assist 2. Now, if the driver's not holding the steering wheel while the system is activated, they'll be warned in different stages until the car is automatically brought to a safe stop. Right, now let's take a look at options across the range. Now, the best place to start is with the various special value packs that Volvo offers. There's a convenience pack that gives you a sunglasses holder, a neck cushion and a charging cable bag. You might also want to look at the protection pack, which gives you a moulded plastic load compartment mat and moulded plastic passenger compartment mats. There's a travel pack with a roof box, a load carrier and a lock kit, a roof-mounted cycle pack with a bike carrier, a load carrier and a lock kit, and a tow bar mounted cycle pack with a retractable tow bar, bike carrier and all-round mud flaps. Virtually all of these features can also be ordered separately. And you might also want to look at things like iPad holders for the rear, a sunshade for the windscreen, a dog harness, and Volvo's Thatcham-approved vehicle tracking system. For the upholstery, you can add the Microtech upholstery inserts of the top Ultimate spec variants into the two lower order variants on request. And across the range, you could alternatively switch to upholstery in a sustainable tailored wool blend. With base core spec, heat for all the seats and the steering wheel, plus an air purifier can be added in for a package price. And on mid-range plus models, you can add the bigger 20-inch 5-spoke alloy wheels we have here. Bear in mind that you're probably going to be paying Volvo extra for your chosen paint colour. The only standard shade is solid black stone. Otherwise, you have to pay extra for one of the metallic or premium metallic shades. We've got metallic Thunder Grey here. Remember too that you'll need to budget for a home wall box if you've never run a plug-in car of any kind before. At the time of this test in spring 2022, Volvo was, through its partner New Motion, offering a 7.4 kilowatt electric home charge point for £509, including installation, after deduction of the available government grant. On to safety, which, as ever with Volvo, is a key focus. Now, despite not having an internal combustion engine to help absorb a frontal impact in a crash, this electric C40 is without doubt one of the safest cars in its class. The XC40 model it's based upon had its front crash structure totally redesigned as part of its switch to a full EV powertrain, along with the addition of a unique safety structure for occupants and the battery. And as you'd expect, there's a wide range of camera safety features. And autonomous braking system called City Safety is of course standard fit, and this system can specifically detect people, cyclists and animals. There's also an oncoming lane mitigation setup that not only stops you from pulling out into the path of an oncoming vehicle, but can also steer you away from such an impact. In addition, you get a driver alert system that warns of driver drowsiness and a lane keeping aid that alerts you if you're drifting over lane delineating lines and subtly steers the car back to where it ought to be. There's also run-off road protection and run-off road mitigation too. And of course, all the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control. Plus, Volvo's usual whips, front seat whiplash protection and SIPs or side impact protection systems. And of course, you get a full complement of airbags, including a full-length inflatable curtain and a driver's knee airbag. As part of the features of the Volvo On Call connected services platform, the emergency services will be advised of your exact location if those airbags are activated in an accident. ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a speed limiter, a road sign information display and a first aid kit also make the team sheet. As mentioned earlier, if you want more, you'll need to stretch at least as far up the range as mid-level plus spec. If you can do that, your C40 will come with a blind spot information system with steer assist that warns you if you're about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle, and will apply steering assistance to ease you back to safety. Also standard from plus spec upwards is cross traffic alert, which will warn you of oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a space, and is able to automatically brake the car if necessary to avoid a collision. There's also a rear collision warning and mitigation system that warns you of impending rear-end collisions, and if one is inevitable, will take steps to mitigate the severity of the impact. It's all very reassuring. We've already given you this C40's EAER-rated operating range in our driving experience section, up to 269 miles for the front-driven Recharge version and up to 274 miles for this all-wheel drive Recharge twin variant. As usual, these are best possible figures, which inevitably vary with trim and wheel size. The front-driven model range figure applies to the base core derivative. It's just under 268 miles for mid-range plus spec and just under 267 miles for a top ultimate model. As for this all-wheel drive Recharge twin version, the quoted 274-mile reading applies to the most affordable plus level of spec. This plusher ultimate version achieves 273.4 miles. In comparison to the brand's directly equivalent XC40 Recharge Pure Electric, this C40's better aerodynamics make a remarkable amount of difference here, giving you around 5 extra miles of range in the front-driven model and around 15 more miles with this all-wheel drive Recharge twin variant. Unfortunately, though, these figures place this Volvo some way down the list when it comes to the range you can expect from a compact EV crossover with a battery of comparable size. Thank this Swedish contender's portly curb weight for that, either just above or just below the 2-ton mark, depending on the drivetrain you choose. It also doesn't help that the shape isn't actually very slippery. Volvo quotes a drag coefficient of 0.32 CD. Most rivals, in contrast, have CD figures in the mid-20s. Designers of other comparable competitors have done better in trimming off the kilos and with aerodynamics, and that shows in the projected range figures that they deliver. If your point of comparison is the front-driven C40 Recharge model we'd recommend, The range figures we've quoted put it in the lower tier of achievers in this segment, alongside such as the Mercedes EQA at 265 miles and the Ford Mustang Mach-E in rear-driven standard range 68 kilowatt-hour form at 273 miles. Most class contenders do quite a lot better. A Polestar 2 in standard range single motor form manages 294 miles. With a Volkswagen ID.5 Pro Performance, you'll be looking at 311 miles. With a rear-driven 77.4 kilowatt-hour Hyundai Ioniq 5 or Kia EV6, it's 315 miles. And with an Audi Q4 40 Sportback e-tron, it's 323 miles. Even to achieve this Volvo stated figure, you're going to need to make a lot of use of the one pedal drive feature that maximises regenerative braking. And you're probably going to need to avoid entry-level core trim, because if you do that, your C40 will come with a heat pump which preserves driving range in really cold weather. Whatever the conditions, as you drive, a readout at the bottom of the instrument cluster briefs you on battery charge, and above it there's a power meter gauge to show whether you're using charge or regenerating it. You're also going to need to make plenty of use of the range assistant functionality you'll find on the car's centre screen. Here, an energy usage system rates your progress in terms of speed, driving style and use of climate control. And if all of this indicates that you might not reach your chosen destination, you can press a range optimizer button in this screen section, which maximises range by limiting climate control functionality. The range assistant screen also has an orange bar that gives you estimated range, while a blue bar gives energy usage in kilowatt hours per 100 miles. On the subject of energy usage, by the way, Volvo claims 2.8 to 3 miles per kilowatt hour for this C40 Recharge twin model, and we've actually only been managing around 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour on this test. Either way, that isn't particularly impressive. The mechanically identical Polestar 2 long-range dual motor manages 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. An all-wheel drive Hyundai Ioniq 5 is 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, and a Tesla Model Y dual motor long range is up at 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. The front-driven Recharge version of this C40, by the way, is rated at between 3.2 and 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. At least charging times are competitive for the two batteries. The 69 kilowatt hour one in the front-driven Recharge variant, of which 67 kilowatt hours is usable, charges at up to 150 kilowatts, as does the 78 kilowatt hour unit in this all-wheel drive Recharge twin, of which 75 kilowatt hours is usable. Either way, a 10 to 80% battery replenishment can take just 37 minutes using a public DC fast charger. A full charge using the onboard AC charger plugged into your 32 amp garage wall box will take 12 hours. The centre screen has a charging section that allows you to set charging limit in amps and percentage terms, and of course allows you to set battery replenishment times so you can take advantage of lower tariff rates. You can, of course, also set charging times remotely, in this case through use of the Volvo On Call app, via which the car's cabin can be remotely heated or cooled before your journey. While charging, the instrument screen gains a green frame and shows various elements of info, including charge completion time, battery percentage level and charging speed. At the time of this test in spring 2022, Volvo was, through its partner New Motion, offering a 7.4 kilowatt electric home charge point for £509, including installation, after deduction of the available government grant. On to issues of tax, aided here, as with every EV, by this car's quoted 0 grams per kilometre zero emission CO2 reading. Of course, in the real world, the whole zero emissions thing is fictitious because it doesn't take into account the emissions impact of the power station energy generation needed to power this car. But the government believes the EV zero emissions mantra, which means that there's no first year road tax licence to pay, saving you a useful few hundred quid, and until 2025 anyway, you won't be saddled with inner city congestion charges. More significantly, your company benefit in kind tax rating will be pitched at Group 2. To give you some perspective on that, an unelectrified Volvo XC40 B3 is rated at Group 35, and even an XC40 Recharge T4 plug-in hybrid is rated at Group 14. Servicing will be at the same intervals as the XC40 every year or 18,000 miles, whichever comes first. But the bill you get should be cheaper because there will be fewer consumables to replace. Though remember that with an EV, tyre wear tends to be greater than with a combustion model. Most C40 drivers won't trouble themselves with any of this though, because maintenance will be covered by their Care by Volvo finance package payments. Customers can book a service directly from that Volvo On-Call app and use the maintenance pickup and delivery service Volvo Valet, which allows customers to have their cars collected, serviced and returned from the comfort of their own home. A service section in the centre screen tells you the date and mileage of the next recommended service, and there's a car status screen with green tick boxes on a real-time infographic of your car to let you know at a glance if anything major needs seeing to. What else? Well, there's the usual 3-year or 60,000 mile warranty, but the battery's covered by its own 8-year or 100,000 mile warranty. Insurance is as steep as it usually is for EVs because insurers are frightened of the higher write-off value of an electric vehicle in an accident. For the front-driven Recharge model in base core trim, think Group 34E, with the ratings rising to Group 35E for plusher Plus and Ultimate specs. For this more powerful Recharge twin all-wheel drive model, it's Group 42E for either spec level. Expect residuals to be similar to those of the XC40. When we tested the XC40 Recharge pure electric model, industry experts CAP were quoting us a 45% retained value after 36 months and 60,000 miles. Volvo expect the cheaper front-driven Recharge C40 models to have even higher values, up to 47%. Volvo's keen to emphasise the efforts it's made towards environmental sustainability as a brand. That's now a key part of the company's ongoing operations, and it's all worth mentioning here because it's likely that part of the reason you'll have wanted an EV like this in the first place is to make your own contribution towards a reduction in pollution and global warming. Volvo's ambition is to be a carbon neutral company by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Climate Agreement. In the short term, the company aims to reduce the life cycle carbon footprint of its cars by 40% between now and 2025 and reach a point of climate neutral global manufacturing by the same year. The Swedish maker's other short-term ambitions include a 25% reduction of CO2 emissions related to global supply chain by 2025 and a 25% reduction in carbon emissions generated by its overall operations, including car production and logistics. It's also intended that at least 25% of the plastics used in every Volvo made from 2025 onwards should be fabricated from recycled material, the most progressive statement in the use of recycled plastic from any premium car maker. Even now, the C40's door linings and carpets are made from 97% recycled material. Volvo was the first car maker to implement the global traceability of the cobalt used in its batteries. Traceability of the raw materials used in the production of lithium-ion batteries is one of the main sustainability challenges faced by car makers. The Swedish maker's committed to full traceability, and by applying blockchain technology, its customers can drive electrified Volvos knowing that the cobalt for the batteries has been sourced responsibly. This model, in the company's own words, is the future of Volvo. Over 75% of the cars the company sells these days are SUVs. And in future, 100% of them will be EVs. But not yet, and certainly not at the kind of prices the Swedish maker's asking for this C40 Recharge in its current forms. For the time being, you can't help but feel that many of those who choose the C40 are people who would have also been quite satisfied with the XC40 Recharge pure electric model it's based upon. Volvo talks of the need for the kind of younger demographic who will presumably find the C40's more coupe style looks appealing, but then adds that it expects older folk to like it too. Ultimately, no one is quite sure how precisely the EV market is going to develop, but Volvo's keen to make sure all the bases are covered. But we're not completely sure that all of them have been here. The C40 will appeal to Volvo loyalists very much, but whether it has the crossover charm to win over a Teutonic audience is much less certain. There are various reasons for that. We're not absolutely sure that all aspects of cabin quality are quite good enough for a car of this price, and the Care by Volvo finance formula the brand offers makes comparisons with rivals difficult, and we can't really see why this twin-motor version needs to be so powerful. The more affordable single-motor variant is all you really need. Overall, our preference in this category would be for a Polestar 2, which probably wouldn't upset Volvo very much, but the C40 undeniably offers something a little different, not only from that car, but also in the segment as a whole. And for that, we like it, and you might too.